Welcome to the Emerging Minds podcast.
This podcast is part of a series called Listening to the Stories of Healing. Within the series, you will hear stories from community and the very diverse experiences of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and how these narratives have shaped the amazing work that is happening in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities across Australia. Here at Emerging Minds, we like to call it the secret garden, the stories and experiences that non-Aboriginal people don't always get to see or hear. Whilst these stories include sadness and hurts and sometimes can feel uncomfortable to listen to, it is through listening to these narratives that you will get a glimpse of the deep wisdom, knowledge and healing practices of families and communities, and understand why our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are part of the oldest continuing culture in the world. Welcome everyone, this is Dana Shen, an Aboriginal cultural consultant working with Emerging Minds. Today we are speaking with Aboriginal Elder Millie Penny and Carol Michie from Telethon Kids. The Ngulluk Koolunga Ngulluk Koort project aims to bring Aboriginal elders and communities of Perth together with service providers and policymakers to develop culturally appropriate strategies to improve outcomes for young Aboriginal children 0 to 6 years and their families. The project focuses on identifying the foundations for raising strong and solid children, the values, priorities and beliefs around child rearing, and the factors considered critical to building healthy, confident and resilient children. Welcome Carol and Auntie Millie, thank you for joining us. It is so lovely to speak with you both today. Auntie Millie, could you start off by telling me a little bit about yourself and what drives you? What are you really passionate about?
Life in general, basically. I love life. My name's Millie Penny. I'm a senior Wajak Yoga. That's the senior woman over here. I'm an elder within my immediate family, but in the community I'm still regarded as a senior woman. But I'm also respected as an elder if I say I'm an elder. And I have that endorsement from my elders, my aunties in particular. I worked for 30 years with women and children's issues. I started out in a child placement respite agency, and then I went on to a mainstream placement agency, went back to studies for a few years, worked in women's refuge a couple of times. Then I worked for family violence programs, managed by family violence programs. And for the last 12 years of my working, I worked in Aboriginal counselling agency, and I worked in a child sexual abuse program. And I stayed there for 12 years. So I left 7 years ago to take on full-time care for a granddaughter. Now I have two, they're 6 and 9. Don't regret that at all. Love the job and still respect the previous clients that I worked with. And they still come up to me today and say that I helped them through a difficult time.
I bet you've really got your hands full with those little ones.
Yeah, yes and no, because 6 and 9 you can manage. I also paint, so I'm starting to get the girls into painting. Very good actually, and reconnecting to my language. I spoke fluently as a child, so it's not hard to reconnect because we have the speakers of our language fluently in our family. And I did, and I'm very selective. I still dance, traditional dance, Noongar dance, women's dance, storytelling. So that's me in a nutshell.
Carol, did you want to tell me a bit about yourself now and what you're really passionate about?
Yeah, so I would like to pay my respects that I'm on Ngulluk Wajak culture. I'm not Ngulluk. I'm an East Aranda woman from Alice Springs, but I have been here for over 30 years. So I've lived all over Australia within different Aboriginal missions, but I am connected to, my mum was a butler from Alice Springs, so I'm connected to all the butler mob, many of us that are, and a lot of the other mob up from Alice Springs. So my background is in early years education. I worked 27 years within the education department and with some of our Aboriginal early years programs. The Best Start program in Australia and the Indigenous Parent Factor, and now I'm with Telethon working with elders and community here in Perth. But my passion is I'm very passionate about our families, kids, children, communities, having a voice in how we live our life, which oftentimes we haven't had. So whether that be in education or research or wherever, but and for our kids to have the strength and to know who they are, where they come from, who they're connected to, and to be able to have a voice in this, in this country that is ours. But oftentimes we haven't been able to have that voice. So and very privileged to be working alongside my elders here. And I've always had elders all out through my life wherever I am in Australia that have guided me. And because my own personal history has had its sadness as well as many of our more. So I've been very fortunate to have people who have been there for me and elders who have guided me. So, yeah, a little bit about me.
Just reflecting a little bit on what you said, Aunt, many non-Aboriginal people may not understand how you became an elder and how you become an elder. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about what that means and what that looks like?
I think different areas have different protocols. So I'll speak on my area because that's where I'm an expertise in my area. Just because you turn 60, you're not an elder. An elder is endorsed by your community, by your elders, and by a selection process. So I fit 3 of those criteria. Number 1, I am the oldest granddaughter within my immediate family, and my mother was the oldest and my grandmother was the eldest. So in those generation of women, I'm there. And also I'm endorsed by my elders within the community, related and not related, and then endorsed by my biological aunties. So that's that process. And it's earned. And believe me, I was quite happy looking at going down the country and raising some chooks. But that hasn't happened. And painting, but, I was challenged as a senior woman to start stepping up. You have something to offer the community. You have information to challenge systems, to challenge government, and why not do it? The chooks are still on the agenda, but not just yet.
So if you're a non-Aboriginal person and you don't know those processes around becoming an elder, what advice would you give to them within their local communities?
I think it's very important to know that there are processes and there are protocols, and it also comes down to respect. You need to earn respect from your other elders. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I'm in my mid-60s, but I have elders still alive in their 70s, in their well into their 80s and 90s, and those ladies are treasures, and we need to sit at their feet and absorb the information because they are the trailblazers that walked before us and fought for us and allowed us to sit here and actually talk to you face to face on modern technology.
Yes, definitely without them. Without them, things might be very different.
Absolutely, because remember my mother's generation and my grandmother's generation didn't have the opportunity to sit at the table and to say, this is what we need, this is what we would like, and how about us coming to some sort of agreement for the future of our children. And I mean, we did have people sitting at that table, but not to the extent that we need to now. As you know, as a First Nations people, we've got major problems with, child protection, incarceration, you name it, health. So we need to start being a voice and continue to be a voice until we are heard on what is the rights of our people and what are the needs of our people.
And it's just really powerful sitting at the table with the 8 elders that we have working with us within the Ngulluk Koolunga Ngulluk Koort project. Some of them are in their 80s, 84. But for them to, doesn't really matter what age, but for them to be able to sit at the table with that life history of being there right through the stolen generation. For them sitting there telling that story from nobody sitting across can deny the effect that it's had. But then to be sitting at the table as an elder with, whether it be government heads or the departments or CEOs from organisations, to say, well, we're coming here to you with solutions that we know that can work. So it's really powerful to have that with the elders sitting there, right there at the table, which they've been sitting at the table for most of their life.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's really, really important to listen to and take on board lived experience versus theory in a classroom, because lived experience is real, and you can see, you can hear, and you can feel the impact of that lived experience, which outweighs numerous times the theory of classroom teaching.
So maybe it's time to just step back and go, well, you tell me what works for your community.
I think that can work, but it has to be Aboriginal driven. Come to the community, not go to a boardroom and bring it to the community. Come to the community, take it to the boardroom.
And then let's do this together.
Yes.
In ways that are much more grounded within, and that's the other great value of having the elders, is because they live in the community. They still live all the generations of whatever the community is experiencing at that time.
Yeah, can I just say the beauty of being part of the Telethon Institute Ngulluk Koolunga Ngulluk Koort program is that it actually gives us a platform to voice our opinions, and our opinions and our recommendations are respected here. So the research and the findings, for me, what attracted me is that it's an international platform, and therefore we can get our concerns, our recommendations implemented and taken to a wider audience globally, basically.
That's amazing. Which brings me on to the next question. Carol, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but could you tell me a little bit more about the project?
Well, it began in 2016 and as a 5-year research project working together with the Aboriginal community within Perth, which is Ngulluk, but obviously they're not only just Ngulluk people who live, Aboriginal people who live in Perth. We have from all over, and Torres Strait Islander families as well. And it has been, right from the start, it has been elder and community driven and led. So it was taken originally to a large meeting with the elders, and 54 elders turned up for it. And out of that, elders nominated to work within the project and were endorsed by who was there as well. So we had 9 elders who were appointed. Fortunately, one of our elders has passed on. So there are 8 elders still working on the project, and it was split up into 4, the north, south, east, west regions of the Whadjuk Budja area, and each of the elders represented those areas. So they were basically in groups of 2. One group was a group of 3 with 9. Then the elders went to the community, and it basically said, where do you want us to advocate on your behalf for your family, for your children, for your Koolungas? So it was from 0 to 5, but as you know, anything with our mob, it is all encompassing, family, community. So yes, while it is an early childhood research project, so out of that 3 priority areas were established so that the community wanted us for the elders to engage with and to advocate on their behalf. So child protection, early years education, and housing and homelessness.
I think the beauty of the research is that the elders have stayed focused, haven't been distracted. The importance of achieving or highlighting the needs of our community. We came in as 9 strangers, and we're a very tight elder group with that same focus. And we're starting to get to know state and federal politicians by their Christian names, getting to know them personally. So that's a massive impact to have, you know. You can work your whole life and not meet a politician, but we sit at the table with politicians, and they are keen to learn and they are keen to listen, because everyone needs strategies, and especially cultural strategies and cultural protocols. What is very, very important is that we are answerable to the elders in the wider community. So we have 1 or 2 meetings.
We have we report back to the large group of elders, which we have about over 130 that are on that. So yes, it's very, very, very community driven and accountable too. Yeah. And while it's a research project, it is quite different than a lot of research projects. We wanted changes. We just didn't want to be written up as papers, or we actually, and that came from the community as well. If you go, these are the areas that we want you to work for. So we want to be able to see changes. We want to be able to see that has been the driving force behind anything that we do and the elders do.
I know it's a little bit early to say, but I wondered if you could share some of the key outcomes that you've seen as a result of this process.
So one of the things is that has also been is that we work and support our Aboriginal organisations that are working within these fields as well. So we work with Ngulluk, which is our Aboriginal housing, and the elders have advocated also on behalf of the 4 Aboriginal housing organisations within WA at a federal level and a state level to have changes there. And we're also starting up an offshoot from this, an Aboriginal early years education program for the next 3 years that is going to be totally run by Aboriginal teacher, Aboriginal EA, Aboriginal project officer within the community that it's in, and it will be a Aboriginal-led, run, organised early years education. So we're pretty excited about that one. And we're also working with a number of different organisations within the child protection, and let Auntie Millie speak to that as well. We've sat with ministers wanting change and giving recommendations and
challenging. Why, is there a high proportion of Aboriginal children in care? Why not put money into the families to support and to stop children from going into care? We recognise and there is a need for care, but there's also has to be reunification within the family. Otherwise, it's submissions all over again, losing your language, losing your identity, losing cultural practices and protocols, and losing the kinship and your identity. So it's very important.
Aunt, what's it meant for you to actually see the last 30, 40 years and to now actually sit at the table and have that voice?
Look, I'm not part of the stolen generation, but I did marry a person who was who was taken at the age of 3. And I can't tell the story because it's not my story, but I can say that I grew up in a family. Well, we were poor, but we stayed together. We connected. We're very, very close. We have our language. We have our traditions. And I'm talking about we have our song lines. We have our dance lines. And we have our cultural foods. And my husband has lost all that. So he's has regained language and cultural practices. And it's just unfortunate that takes away a person's identity, really, really takes away, especially a child, because at the age of 3, one would think you'd be part of a big family, and that's your formative years, 0 to 6. So if you've lost the grounding of who you are, then who are you?
Have you seen a change in how governments value Aboriginal elders' voice now?
I believe so. A step in the door is better than the door still being slammed shut. Yes. So we're optimistic. Might not take our generation, but our generation has a voice. And the next generation will stand up and have a stronger voice. And then the next generation hopefully will have an even stronger voice so that changes are made.
So not only are you showing that for your grannies, but you're also modelling that for the community as well.
It has to be community focused and share that knowledge. Share your language. We don't own that language. That's ancient language that was there before we were born, before our parents were born. Share it. Hand it on. Start reclaiming who you are. Language is part of your identity, and we don't own it. Leave it all behind. You can't, you take it to the grave and it's useless. Leave it all behind and let the next generation grow with it.
Carol, what's it meant for you personally to actually be able to honour the voice of elders in this?
It's just such a privilege to be able to work with elders and sit and listen and hear their expertise and be able to be a small part in opening some of those doors so they can sit at the table. I can't really put the words to how much that has meant to me. And I guess one of the indicators of that also, and with the elders, is so we coming to the end of it. It's very rare that you get a 5 years within any project or any program. So that was a privilege in that, getting that. But saying to the elders, we're coming to the end of our 5 years, but we have an opportunity to continue this for another year. And we've also got 3 other projects coming out. It will be another 3 years. And this is how we wanted to keep going. But obviously also realising that the elders only signed up for 5 years. I'm sure there's other things that they would, well, in the Wodjila world, you're retiring, you go and do what you want to do. But our world, we live and breathe it every day of our life. And from the day one of 5 years ago to now, asking the elders, do you want to still be a part of this? They are just as passionate, committed, 5 years down the track, which is 5 years in their life, 84, 85, and still wanting to sit at the table and be part of this. They want to be engaged with seeing change for our community and families and children. And, it's that people go out and go, oh, I'm not really part of this. And so but the elders have said, no, if you're willing to come back and sit at the table, we're willing to sit through and work through this, which we have for those who've wanted to do that. And that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
It is.
And then to see appointment of people on boards that are there to have a voice for all of us and make a change. So, and at the end of the day, we want to see systems change. Systems have got to change. And I guess it's the other powerful thing for me is just being able to know in some way that we can do this as a community at times without all of the system that says, you have the permission to this, you have the permission to that. Our kids are growing up, a lot of them growing up strong. They know who they are, they know who their families are, they know where they're from, they're learning their language, they know which country they're standing on, they're getting educated in both worlds, and they're coming up with a voice. And they've got the backing of their elders, and also being able to work alongside the elders, which that's been exciting as well.
It is. And I think times are changing. There's a lot of politicians, state and federal, that are pro-Aboriginal and want to listen and want to do something and want to change. Even if it's a tiny little chink in the big armour, you can still notice a chink. Yeah.
And so they're coming and knocking on the door and going, help, we do want help. So we're saying, well, and the elders say, yep, if you want help, what kind of help do you want? Because we've sat at the table as well when you've said that, and you kind of come in with your preconceived ideas. And so, if you really want help and to walk together and work together, it does mean there's going to be some hard conversations.
Yes, and the beauty of this is that we're not tokenistic. We are genuinely concerned with our community, and we need to be, because you don't stand up, the next generation could fall. And so we need to continue with that, pushing for changes.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about what it looks like for children to grow and be strong and healthy and thriving in culture?
Look, children need a safe home, an education, and they need to know who they are. So we need to, I do it with my grandchildren. I take them bush, us women paint up with ochre, and we'll dance on land. And the little ones are watching, and they know who they are. We don't want to get caught up with being ashamed of being Aboriginal, which could happen, which has happened. So we need to bring in the re-emergence of identity and be proud of who you are. Be proud that you're Aboriginal and know that you're Aboriginal and speak your language. And our children have a right to early education. So I can use my own as an example. I have Miss, she just turned 6, and she accessed daycare, kindy. She's in preschool, and she can read and write. And that is massive for our people. And this is a story to say why it is important to get your children off to daycare, get your children off to kindy, because if you just wait until grade 1, they're already beyond the 8 ball, and it's so hard to catch up. And do teachers have the patience for our kids to catch up is another question. So it's important for us as a community also to start taking ownership and to start thinking about our children's future, not the here and the now, but the children's future.
That was one of the initial questions that we asked community within the research, and the community was really big on that on the good things, the strong things that they saw as wanting and acknowledging as growing our kids' stuff strong. And oftentimes any services or government agencies go into work for the community, they always pick out the things that aren't working. So let's focus on that. And the community here was like very strong on going, we want these good, strong things to be acknowledged. So, and just Auntie Millie's already spoken and acknowledged a lot of them. So elders are important within the community. Having our community is important. Education, having a strong identity, language, connection to country, culture, strong mothers and female role models, and the same with our men, fathers and male role models. Sharing and caring for our mob, trust, feeling safe and secure and loved. Our kids growing up living in two worlds, knowing that they have to do that, where they fit with that. Respect and acknowledgement of our Aboriginal ways and culture and health and wellbeing. So the community was really strong on focusing on recognising those strong things within and working on that, and how do we have programs that come out of those strong things to build up. So that's for our education program that we're going to, early years education program that we're going to start with the families, is built basically around all of that as our models.
Could you please tell us your concerns or views regarding the increase of Aboriginal children in the child protection system?
Overall, we're looking at the state's statistics on Aboriginal children that have been removed. I think what I would like to see is that let's have a look at the areas of proportion that children have been removed for. We have 14 nations of Noongar people in our region. How many children are taken from each of those regions? Because remember that we're a minority in our own country, in our own community. So our numbers will always be higher because of that. So break it down and then we'll know exactly how many children are in care, where these children come from, what are these issues, and then work individually with the departments or the powers to be. For example, I came into, this is the state hospital for children. I came in here last week and I deliberately went up to a couple of ladies with 3 little children. I knew that wasn't their children. I just said, oh, excuse me, are they, you've got to be bold sometimes, and the grey hair gives you that license. So I just said, excuse me, are they family or are they fostered? And she said they're fostered. And these children were from Warburton, right out in the desert, Kalgoorlie region. And they're here based in Perth. So they were open to conversation, and there's a connection, national connection with Aboriginal people. And the little one, the little 3-month-old baby who never saw me before in tiny little life, grabbed it onto my hand and wouldn't let go, just held tightly. And the two in the prams could see the connection, the Aboriginal connection, this, that spiritual connection. They're away from their lands, and we just sat there and talked, myself and my another elder. And this morning I came in, and little things like this do make a difference. When Carol came down to collect me from the reception, I was talking to an Aboriginal woman who was telling me her story, who her family story was, and that. So there's always that connection. So we need to break down those high number, and I think we'll get little bits of little bits of little bits of little bits, and it doesn't look so daunting. You know what I mean? Might be 20 from Noongar Budja, might be 20 from Yamajis, might be 20 from, and then it's not so big.
Yeah, so that's why every time it's taken out of community, just, if you actually, leave it with, and community is a part of making that restoration and healing and making it work in ways that work within family and culturally. But that's not to say that sometimes, yes, our children do need to be removed from situations, but there always has to be connection of how do we heal it as a community? How do we make this better? And yes, when you do break it down within communities and families, it is much more doable. It's not this big, scary number. It doesn't have to be that big. And that's where our Aboriginal organisations need to be able to be supported and resourced to be able to do that, wherever in Australia that is. And that is where more has to be put into being able to do that. And our elders and our young people who are coming up and our workers who've worked within these fields under different systems and have got the knowledge and the expertise and also seen how it doesn't work, because they do live in the two worlds of being able to be resourced to make it happen within community. It's got to be a plus and an advantage for us how to do it. But yeah, it doesn't have to be always put into this big scary number of we can't do this and everyone goes, oh, because we can.
Oh, I really appreciate your wisdom. I could sit here all day listening to you. So we're about to finish off soon, but I wondered, Aunt, did you want to tell me what your hopes are for the children within your community?
I think that we really, really, really need to reinforce identity and pride. Let's say, I'm a proud little Noongar boy, or I'm a proud little Noongar girl. And language is free. Give it out. Sit down and teach. I was talking to Miss, she'll be 2 next month, talking Noongar to her yesterday. And that's all we can do. And keep challenging the system, keep just challenging. And younger ones coming up are looking, listening and watching and learning, and they can pick it up. And this next generation is going to be more educated to challenge the system. So that'll continue to grow. And I'm very proud that we have Aboriginal representation in state and federal parliament, because my philosophy is I don't care who they are, vote for them because they're Aboriginal. They'll always be outnumbered, but you've got a representative there.
Oh, my hope is that they grow up and their next generation, and that within Australia, in a country that acknowledges who they are, the country they're on, what they have to offer, and in all of it, language, knowledge of country, of spirituality, of the art, story and community, and just all the strengths that offers, and that they grow up in a country that acknowledges that holds that and seeks them out for wanting that to be a part of that, and to know that whole history of the 60,000 years of being here has got something to offer, and they have something to offer within that. And for that to be recognised and just celebrated and enjoyed, and being able to live together with that being a part of who they have the strength in that, and then to live that and to be able to speak that and be able to bring their families and children up in a country that is good for them. And we have lots to offer. Our kids have lots to offer. They are bright, they are full of life. I want them to be able to feel that they fit in with that. They don't have to hide. They don't have to be a part of systems that don't build on those strengths.
Can I just conclude by saying that my philosophy and sayings in the community lately has been for the last couple of years, is they can't deport us, cannot deport us anywhere in the world. This is our land, this is our budget, this is our home.
It always was, always will be. I'm excited because just at our school, which we've been involved in, little public school down the end of our street for the last 23 years, and we've always been the minority there, but our 20 Aboriginal kids out of the 300 are running the NAIDOC assembly and standing up there saying to everybody, this is my family. They're going to point out in language where they're from, who they are, and what this, and stand there tall and proud and going, yep, this is it. That's good.
And that's empowering to our next generation.
Yeah, definitely. Without them, we wouldn't be here. It could have been a lot different for many of us. Thank you for joining us in our podcast series, Listening to Stories of Healing.
Visit our website at www.emergingminds.com.au to access a range of resources to assist your practice. Brought to you by the National Workforce Centre for Child Mental Health, led by Emerging Minds. The National Workforce Centre for Child Mental Health is funded by the Australian Government Department of Health under the National Support for Child and Youth Mental Health Program.